Good afternoon to our Honourable Minister, our Deputy Minister, to all the MECs here present in the room, our Executive Mayors, and all the HODs, and our DG from the province. Mine is to really, firstly, just to highlight some of the key decisions and resolutions that have been made through the deliberations of this afternoon and this morning. And in particular, we've heard a number of perspectives on reimagining the Waterberg, and we trust that some of these resolutions, will then be taken into our hub, and the team in the hub will be able to then also assist and support the district in driving these key decisions. So the first one really was to say government needs to unlock the potential of women by paying due consideration and giving them access to finance, building capacity and capability, and just creating opportunities. And we're saying this needs to be done through a gender-responsive budget. Then the skills revolution in education should also be accelerated to support youth development and the involvement of our young people in the economy and the opportunities that will come about as a result of the deliberations. The structure of the economy has to become more equitable and transformed so that the ownership patterns can be reflective of society. And then the role of the traditional leaders and institutions of the traditional leaders also requires more prominence. And Minister here has committed to looking at an amendment of our regulation in preparation for the reopening of the traditional council offices, and that we also consider our budgets and these being made available, in filling some of the vacancies in the traditional council offices. And just also considering that the traditional council offices where there was closure and loss of revenue, that we also consider providing them with the relief grant to the sector to actually minimize whatever that impact was on them. And then we've already alluded to the implementation of a gender-responsive budget, and this is where the MEC of Finance in the province can also then really begin to assist and look at ways of how we can then track and monitor this whole approach of whatever the rand amount is that we have, how much is being spent, towards women initiatives. And then also just noting that most of the farms have been converted to game farming in the area, and really the threat on food security. We are also then urging the district to look at the land that is available, for women, and to really begin to embark on farming and food production as expressed. And then the district and its locals to also provide more details on how COVID-19 has been impacted, but looking at it specifically around revenue collection and providing those specific figures to determine what the challenges are and what additional support is then required. The district and its is also requested to identify and package any development programs and projects for consideration, where the private sector can then, in collaboration, be able to then grow the actual district. And then also looking at the university, engaging the university on some of the innovative ways and the technologies that can be used to grow and develop the district, especially on the agricultural sector. Just in terms of tools of trade, around farming, we were looking at also suggesting, that the tools of the trade that are actually required be provided, but also then assisting farmers to graduate to becoming commercial farmers. Then the collaboration also between the existing farmers who can train other young farmers in various businesses, like the crocodile farming, and then also just to invest in supporting youth enterprises with skills funding and access to markets. And then the overall district economic recovery plans should also explore diversification and beneficiation opportunities, whilst also strengthening and unlocking existing key economic sectors. And in particular, the presentation from Minister earlier, where there were some lessons that we could also learn out of the model from China. And then also, lastly, just providing the targeted support to building the institutional capacity and capability of the municipalities. And that was also demonstrated also practically by the resources that we have actually brought in to come and really support from a financial and infrastructure and governance perspective. So just the whole reimagining of Waterberg, we've considered through the deliberations today what distinctly does Waterberg actually have? What is it endowed with? We've also looked at some of the potentials around the district. We've also then looked at saying going forward, you know, when the committees are then created or formed, we need to then begin to look at how is it that we can optimize on what we have and then specifically transform that through our district hub and facilitating that whole intergovernmental planning work through all the spheres, involving all stakeholders like the private sector, civil society, and so on, just for us to then get not only that common shared reimagined Waterberg, but to really ultimately achieve what the district then needs to achieve. So thank you so much, Facilitator.
Thanks very much, DG. Those were draft resolutions. They were capturing our discussions here. If it was in a conference of some sort, MEC Squad will be moving for the adoption of. So in this case, these are some of the work that we are going to do. And this structure is not a standing structure. We're just coming here to actualize and start to implement what has been mentioned. So it is part of the policy that DM Tawi spoke about that existed until the launching of the pilot sites. So we don't have to go to adopt them and have a contest about them. So we're not going to waste time. I'm going to call the minister to come and give the closing remarks for this session. I know I have suffered you from morning sitting here. And some, like the minister is complaining to say, Basco, we must take into account that we're not of the same age. There are those of us who have been there for quite some time. So minister will be coming to do the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Facilitator. I think the problem with COVID, though it has catapulted us into the digital age, but it has also been very abusive, because you sit, first meeting 8, the next meeting at 10, the next meeting at 12, the next meeting at 2. It's just very abusive. You sit and sit and sit. So we need to just learn to take breaks now and again, small ones, just to stretch and walk. One of the ministers, male ministers, was complaining yesterday that he went to a chiropractor, I think, for his back. And he said, how many times do you stand up in these Zoom meetings? And he said, no, we just sit. And he said, well, if you don't stand and walk a bit, by the end of the Zoom period, you'll all be taken out with wheelbarrows. So, but having said that, let me just, first, we should have really apologized at the beginning of the meeting that the champion, the national champion for Waterberg, was not here. She has a bereavement, Minister Nchabe. She is the one who would have been closing, but she has a bereavement in the family. I will not abuse you, I will just be very short. And I'll say thank you very much for taking the Saturday and being here for this meeting and agreeing to come face to face. The only thing I want to just reinforce what the conclusions are, which I didn't see on the board, was that I think there were 2 or so people who said the 30% set aside, the compliance requirements are very difficult and they make it impossible for people to actually access. So I think the Treasury family, the COGTA family, the economic development, Babumkoni, all of us should look and see how these can be made easier without corruption or anything, but just to facilitate, because it doesn't help to have a facility that no one can access. It's as good as not being there. And I was very intrigued by what the speaker from I didn't get her name, I'm so sorry, the professor from the University of Limpopo said in terms of how they look at development, which is pretty much almost the same way as the Chinese think, what do you have? What's in your hands? And I think that is a very good starting point. And I was also very impressed with what they offer, which I think a lot of, not just Waterberg, but Limpopo can benefit from. And I want to